She knew the story of Moxie Breastbind as well as anyone. The hit of legend. The story was recounted in comic books across half of the Khanate. But she knew the real story. Moxie was her best friend. And even if she hadn't been within 1,000 kilometers of that event, even if Moxie had never shared the full details, she knew how to read her friend, and she knew how that tax collector died. His name had been Macaulay. Moxie always said her biggest hit was Jochi Kassar, and maybe that was true if you measured by the rank of the target. But Macaulay was certainly the most famous, even if the comics didn't always list his name, and the readers were often far more concerned with whether or not Jurian John had illustrated Moxie's nips in each particular issue. Jurian John, she had no doubt the man existed, even without that name, was the bloke Moxie had fucked. Jurian Bay, 2 years ago. Met him in a pub, went back to his place, had made his night, and then she woke up the next morning, the sun already high in the sky, and her head splitting. Had probably woken the bloke up, fumbling about on the floor for her underwear, or chugging an entire flagon of water. And then she'd gone out and killed a man. Sex and booze. Everyone had a different way of dealing with it. Josephine herself had never killed a man while she was drunk or hungover. No, she was always stone sober. On some of her kills she later wished she'd been blind drunk, having to see their faces whenever she closed her eyes. But she knew how to handle herself, knew that coordination was the key, that the plan needed to be followed exactly. In a well-planned assassination, you needed to focus. Name? Josephine blinked, came back to herself, took a deep breath through her nose, and then immediately regretted it. There was a horse cart just down the ways across the dock, selling grilled mutton on a bun. The scent was overpowering, and she felt seasick. Still felt like the ground was impossibly sturdy beneath her, and had trouble in adjusting to the lack of sway in it. "Your name, please?" asked the port official again. He said it in Mongolian as an afterthought. "Tane Ner Khan Bey." The man had a terrible accent. English was easily his mother tongue, and that she could have figured out before he even opened his mouth. He was as white as she, with a smattering of freckles on his nose and cheeks, and red hair sprouting from beneath his headdress. He wore traditional Mongolian garb, a deal and a headdress, with boiled leather chest plate, and had a curved dagger at his belt. "Kane," she said, coming back to herself. "That's your surname, is it?" he asked, scribbling down on his clipboard. She nodded. "And your given name?" he asked when it became apparent she didn't intend on immediately spinning it out on her own. She furrowed her brow. "Is it normal to record this?" she asked. "I was under the understanding that the Kiwi kingdoms were a part of the Khanate, and that this wasn't a border crossing." "Standard procedure, ma'am," he replied, folding his arm over the clipboard and looking up to meet her eyes. "There's been an increase of insurrection lately."
So I'm here with Agnes. Agnes, can you just explain what your book is about in a few paragraphs or two?
Sure. So this is a young adult portal fantasy, and it is about a couple of kids from Toronto. They find out that they've inherited a base under the Atlantic Ocean, which is guarding a castle with portals to the other worlds. So it's a little bit like Chronicles of Narnia and Harry Potter, that sort of thing.
All right, thank you very much. Do you have a website or Twitter or anything you'd like to mention?
I do, so you can find me under my website, which is www.aajankiewicz. The spelling for that is JANKIEWICZ.com, and all my social media is on there as well.
Thank you very much.
Kelly said, "You scare me whenever you do this shit, Joe." "Do what?" But she cringed as soon as she said that. "Disappear like this," Kelly said with a sigh. "You told me you're going for a ride. You told the stable girl you'd be gone for an hour or two. It's been over 5. Silence. She didn't know exactly what to say here. Kelly was her oldest friend. Her oldest friend. There's nothing they hadn't shared, but there were just some things. "You know," she said presently, "if you count the bandits, I've killed 49 people. Zuku will be lucky number 50. That's worse than most serial killers." Kelly reached out, put a hand on her shoulder. "Serial killers off people for kicks. You and I." "I know," Josephine cut in.
Hey, I'm Ben Van Dongen, and we're part of a writing team, Adventure Worlds Press, imprint of Mirror World Publishing, and writer of half of No Light Tomorrow short story collection, sci-fi stories, very Twilight Zone type feel to them. And that one there is the illustrated edition, so I've actually got some stories, pictures for the stories, which is a lot of fun. And Christian over here, he's the guy with horror stuff.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Christian Laforet, horror author. My book, The Space Between Houses, is a collection of short horror stories, all different subgenres of horror. And that's my first book. My second book is co-written with my friend Ben Van Dongen and is a science fiction collection, No Light Tomorrow.
All right, thanks.
There were 200 bottles of saffron wine. It was the most goddamn delectable thing she'd ever tasted. They had beluga whale caviar and Italian Beto cheese. They served Brazilian lobster and Siberian roast wolf soup, had a harpist so graceful as to make you weak in the knees. They did that Japanese thing where you eat your finger foods off a naked lady, and she was a bloody supermodel.
Hey there everyone, I'm MJ Moores. I'm a fantasy sci-fi writer. I do crossover work. My first book is Tempest, and it happens to take place in space. And it's not outer space, but on a planet. Think of Tomb Raider meets Dune, and you'll get a really good idea. So if you're not familiar with Lara Croft and Tomb Raider, then you can consider Indiana Jones, but female and kick butt. So they go on an adventure through the Forbidden Deserts, and I gotta tell you, the guide, the lead, Taya, doesn't really believe what they're gonna find or if they're gonna find the hidden Chronicles, but she's been hired to do a job, and do her job she will. It's a great read, and I hope you'll join me at mjmoores.com. Thanks.
And is this more young adult or general fiction?
This would be new adults, and I would say 16 plus, although some 12 and 14-year-olds just dive in and can't stop reading.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.